Okay.
Paul Sanderson.
Chester Duraki, Vaughn Morgan,
Jim Ralston.
Chip Huzzy. And we have a quorum, and the meeting is being recorded. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is we have appointments here with Mr. David Gill, who's chairman of the Cemetery Trustees Committee.
Thank you.
David, you're on.
You mind if I come center stage so I can be
Not-
heard and I can actually read from a distance with my glasses? Because
Yeah.
I can't. I'm also here with the other folks of the cemetery committee, Bob Ellen and Michelle Albach. And joining us tonight is Alan Smith as we go down the options for you that you may want to consider. So this is more of an update and a decision brief where you're either going to table it or say, I don't know. Or maybe, let's do that. All right, so let's start off with the updates. Your cemetery committee and crew have been working real hard to manage the cemetery over the years of what's taken place. And so for the last 6-7 years, we've been not only trying to fix the stones that have been broken, clean them, get it erect, but figure out what to do, and at the same time, try to figure out what we really have and where people are at, and maybe identify, hopefully, the number of lots that we have to sell, where we're at remaining. Because a number of years ago, there was a big, we need to do it now. Well, didn't have to. At one point, the town did something, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So that's what we've been doing. We've been keeping track. We've been remapping. We've done it probably 4 times over the last 6 years. And we're at where we're at right now. We don't take much of your budget, or the town's budget. We're about $9,000 a year, and we usually give a little bit back. But I can surely spend the line item numbers that folks want us to spend in a different way if we need to. All right, so with that, right now, we figure with Hillside, we've already done Prospect Hill, but with Hillside, we've got about another 2 years to erect, clean, straighten up those stones and all the accoutrements that are out there that surround the stones. We figure at this point with the 3 of us. And we're a little bit longer in the tooth now, so we're not as fast as we used to be. But we try to keep it so that we don't have to spend any money or very little of the town's money. We did purchase an online management system. A number of years ago, there was one that was purchased from BMI. It basically is a piece of garbage. It doesn't do anything. This new program, a little over $2,000, I think it was, and maybe a little bit of a maintenance fee that you have to pay every year. But we'll be able to manage the location of where people are buried, who's bought it, and they'll tie to each other who owns it, and our citizens will be able to see where their loved ones are buried or relatives and so forth. It's a real nice system. We're just learning how to use it, how to play with it. So the future generations, when we pass this on to other folks, are really the ones that are going to have to manage it much better than we are, and it'll help the town. But anyway, so we're going to pay DMI their final payment this year, and then we cancel them out of their $221. I can see, you see that's a real good program for the one that we have now. So hopefully set up the town in a much better position to manage and control and allow our citizens to see what's going on. The Breakfast Hill Cemetery, we just cut the trees, and it went pretty well. We've only had one citizen I'm aware of that was upset, and she can go hug trees someplace else, or grow some, whatever. I'm going to call it like it is. Or plant some bushes, or whatever she wants to do around there. We'll let her do it. She made the request that maybe we should plant some certain bushes out there. Yes, she can join us and do that anytime she wants. Sale prices of lots. We've done a validation or a check throughout the local areas of Stratham and so forth, and Rye and Hampton and Northampton and Portsmouth. And we're right there in the middle. We're a little bit different, and they're a little bit different. The cost is all about the same. The sizes might be a little bit different, or the rules might be a little bit different, but we're not out of line. We're right in the middle. We're doing a good job of managing our cost for our lots for the people in the town. So we think we're okay. We haven't had any complaints. And you can see the prices right there if anybody's interested. And it would behoove you as maybe over the next couple of years, if you're thinking about buying a lot, this might be the time to do it. Right now, on an average, we jump from 2 to 10, but for those who want caskets. On cremations, we're just starting to see the increase as it catches up with the society norms. As you know, the Catholics now allow folks to have people cremated. So more and more Catholics are doing it. So there's less Catholics that may be going to the Catholic cemetery up here. I'm Catholic, I can talk about it. I can even give you absolution if you want. Here you confession, it's all good. The point is, we have a number of casket lots available, 59. And the way we've been going, that could last us 6 years, it could last us 10 years. We're not quite sure because every year is different. We just had a person buy an 8-person casket lot this year. It doesn't happen that often. And then we had, I think, 2 other lots or 1 or 2 other lots that were sold. All right, next year we may only have 4 total lots that are sold on casket lots. You got to take a look at the demographics and our population makeup within the town. We used to have older and retired folks and people bought casket lots up here. Well, we've gone more to those who are moving in, get their kids through school, move out, sell it to the next family, get their kids through school, and therefore the older demographics that we had is not really the same anymore. Even though we just had an increase with this senior citizen housing, many of those folks are already coming in with places that have been purchased. So, with that, you may be seeing more people going towards cremations as society changes and so forth. And we're starting to feel that a little bit. We're not quite there on the average with what is going across the nation, but I think we're going to get there in the pretty much near future. So, with that, that's what we have remaining. We have 59 2-person, 26 4-person, and 2 8-person. We only sell 2-person lots at a time at this point. Cremation, we have 16. But once we pull out some more stumps and fix the road after we pull out the stumps, we'll have maybe close to double that. We'll see. Over the years, we expect it to last for 8 to 12 more, depending on how many casket lots are purchased. All right, so there you go. There's that stick right there. What do? We're going to run out of casket burial lots within 12 years, thereabouts, give or take a few. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know. Senior housing, we don't expect it to affect us, and they told us that in the beginning. I was very concerned, but right now, we're not seeing any influx of folks from this new development affecting the cemetery up there. I think most of them have their lots purchased from wherever they were prior to us because they're at a certain age. When you get, up at 55, 60, you start looking at things like that. You can join my club any day. All right, senior housing, we talked about it. Available funds. This is what's unique. Karen and I looked at this today. It's out to lunch. Perpetual care can only be used for perpetual care. It can't be used for anything else other than taking care of those headstones and so forth up there. The cemetery fund of 89 can be used to purchase land. It can be used to purchase columbariums. It can be used for all kinds of things. But I've only got 89,516 in there. So, what I'm proposing, once we get into a meeting, we'll take a look at it, is that we change how the money that we receive for lots sold. Right now, 50% of, let's say a $2,000 lot, 50% of that, 1,000 goes to perpetual care. 1,000 goes to the cemetery fund. And they're evenly split. Well, as you can see, something happened way back when. Way back when, from what Karen and I were able to, Karen was able to determine earlier, there was a one pot of money, and when they split it around, could have been.
Up until, it looks like up until 2007, the perpetual care and the cemetery funds were all commingled together in one fund. So it was separated somewhere, it looks like 2008. It was separated. It obviously wasn't separated like 50-50. So
now we're in a situation where really it should have been flipped on where the funds were and how they're being used. I can't use the perpetual care fund for anything other than what is listed, and that has the most money. We did have one town go to court. I think they won, but we'd have to go to court to be able to try to do that, as I understand it, and they may or may not give it to us. I don't know, but right now, so I'm looking at just stopping it and having 80% of the money go to the cemetery fund, 20% go to the perpetual care at this point, if I'm allowed to do it, once we sell a lot. But I can't do anything with the way the money is right now unless we go to court. So that's where we're at with this situation.
It's earning about $25,000 a year in interest, but the cemetery trustees can't, or the trustees of the trust fund can't forward to us more than the actual cost of us maintaining the cemetery lots under perpetual care. So approximately 50% of the cemetery the lots are under perpetual care. So what I do on an annual basis is look at the average number of hours through Paul and what he says it takes to do the cemetery, cut that in half and request that check from the trustee of the trust fund, which I get. But it's like $2,612 or something.
Very much.
Because it's just the actual cost.
Right.
The proper footwork or review of what was going on and what was being used or how it was being used, something was missed when they did this.
Right, but it's way too late
Because
to,
it should be the opposite of the way it is right at this point. All right, so that brings us down to number 11. On 18 July 2000, there was an agreement by the selectmen and trustees of the trust fund for land for the cemetery. All right, now you see it. We had it. It was there. Supposedly.
Yeah.
By this one, if you look at this one, whoops,
I know.
I'm sorry, number
yeah, that's.
Number
right.
7, agreement number 7, whichever one it is, I think you guys have got it. Or article number 7, excuse me, did I say that right? Article 7?
That's the 2005 one,
Yeah, 2005, yeah.
but I think that agreement is dated earlier than that.
That's the one right.
Which one?
That one right there, article 7. Should be this one. Here you go.
All inaccurate, that's okay.
Right.
Anyway, so there's an article 7 there that says, yeah, we got some land and so forth. Now, somewhere along the way, 2005 or 2000, land was set aside for baseball fields, softball fields, or whatever was going on. But that land that's still out there is supposedly still available for the cemetery, as I understand, unless it's
Right.
confused.
It was initially set aside for cemetery.
Mhm.
And then there was an agreement made through the Board of Selectmen and the cemetery trustees to say that we could use it for recreation fields, even though it's all still owned by the town.
It was all inaccurate. If you go back to, the land was purchased in the 1980s, and it was in the mind of the current town administrator that it was supposed to be a cemetery, but
Right.
that, of course, was never a restriction. The
Right.
trustees of the cemetery can't own land.
Right.
It's town land.
Yeah, and he used that
Yeah.
as the impetus to get a good chunk of money from the gas pipeline by calling it cemetery and saying, okay, the land that you're going to put this pipeline with would hold X number of grave sites at X dollars. And that was how he put a value on and how it became cemetery space.
Yeah. Meanwhile, much of it was a gravel pit that was filled up as a stump dump, which made sure that it could never be used as a cemetery. Long story.
Right, but that was how it was valued out.
All right, so bring it fast forward to today, and having walked out there and seen what I think or thought was available, I found it wet. It may be bordering right on 95 if I was correct by looking at it. And you could take a look at it.
So are you talking the Chick property or the existing field?
No, not the, I was looking beyond the existing field.
Okay, yeah,
and
beyond
that's where I was looking
the
at, where I was
Chick
led to
property.
believe that's what it was.
And that's very wet.
Okay, is that even available anymore? Somebody said it was sold, but I'm not sure.
No, it's definitely available. When Bob Krishman was working on that, and he was a cemetery trustee for another town, he went out to look at it because he was in the process of developing a cemetery in Stratham. Our concern was whether or not that land could be used as a cemetery due to the proximity of the radius of the well.
Right.
The answer was yes, it could. It couldn't be used for a pet cemetery, but it could be used for a human cemetery because of the concrete things. But the good land for it was so far down that you'd almost need a wetlands bridge to get back there.
So, bottom line, I wasn't overly impressed by walking out there and going through that place and then having 95 right on the backside, you're hearing the traffic.
Yeah.
And the folks are gonna be trying to bury their loved ones and so forth. I just didn't see it as a proper location. Now, maybe you folks may see it differently, as a selectman.
No, I went through it myself, and I didn't see it that
Right,
way.
I think you walked it with me.
Yeah.
We actually had it mowed out so that we could get down there and actually
Down
see
through it, North.
I didn't know we
what we
were.
bought for $370,000 or
Right.
something. And it wasn't a prize.
Exactly, that would I wasn't overly impressed with it. So, again, back to the first bottom line up front. If you desire casket burial options for your town residents, we're gonna run out of land in the Prospect Hill Cemetery to do that. We're guessing, we're trying to do the swag, scientific, wild-ass guess, that
I wondered what that meant.
yeah, for maybe 8 to 12 years
Everything.
at best. And if there's a rush to buy lots, well, we're gonna run out sooner. All right, so what do we, as cemetery folks, see us doing? Kind of like the tree situation where we said, these trees are gonna fall, they're dying, they're gonna ruin these stones. So we were brought to court, and of course the judge says, no, and we cut his trees and so forth. If you don't like it, don't hire him. Down the road. Well, it's kind of the same thing with this. Here's what we're going to do. No matter what takes place on the decision with the selectmen on whether you might want to purchase future land or not, we're going to do columbariums up on Prospect Hill. We have $89,000 in our fund that we can go ahead and use to purchase columbariums. Michelle, what about right now? Do you remember the...
About 4 years ago, it was 30,000.
Okay, so it's gonna be a little bit more, and that's with, as we understand it, the concrete platform and everything else. And we can do about how many columbariums or caskets? Or
No, that was for
cremations?
72 niches,
Huh?
72 niches, which is 144 urns.
Which is gonna pay for itself. And we're talking about taking no more than this amount of land,
Oh, it's
thereabouts.
less.
All right, it's gonna stand up high, we're not digging. All right, so we're gonna take care of the town going forward, no matter what, with cremations. As somebody had mentioned earlier, more and more folks are going towards cremations. We're just in a unique situation at this point where part of our population is getting much older, 60 and above, and then you have everybody else with children. All right, so we're not seeing some of the same things other towns may be seeing, but we're gonna see, however this happens in the future. So we're gonna do columbariums, we're gonna spend that money and do columbariums no matter what. So that brings us to a land purchase option. If the selectmen decide that they would like to continue on with casket burials for the residents in the town of Greenland, we have a very viable option for you. So with that, there is a purchase agreement that's here. And from my perspective, I find it as a viable option if you want to do that. I think the cost is appropriate or at a reasonable level for what land goes today. Having been out there and walked it, it slopes down. It's off of about 0.2 of a mile on, I forgot the name of the road. Newington Road on the right-hand side. I think it's about 300-400 feet of frontage. Looks like a very viable option for the town. Now, I'll take it one step further. There's 8 acres there. And if you're asking for $556,000 or thereabouts for 8 acres, you probably can't get much of a better option for land if you want to go down the path of looking for a place for caskets. Now, the land has good loom on it. Looks like it might be able to be leveled out, and there's some fill there that also the town can use. And, oh by God, if the fire department should want to go home to a different place, this might be a good location if you need land for that. Or the library can be moved out there if you really want to go ahead and take care of issues. So with that, I will turn it over to you because I'm going to give it to Alan Smith. And of course, if you do nothing, go back to the bottom line up front. We're going to put columbariums in, and we're going to take care of the town with cremations that way. If you do not want to purchase land for caskets. So with that, Alan, you're up, sir. I'm sure they're going to have some questions reference the land that you might be able to answer for.
I probably could.
Thank you, sir.
Question away.
First of all, I'd like to thank you guys in the cemetery committee for doing what you do up here. You do a lot that people don't see. You've done a lot of repairs and everything else. I mean, it's really, incredible job.
That's one of our volunteers for
Yeah.
about 4 years. Every Sunday, no matter high water, she was out there cleaning, picking stones. Absolutely.
Okay. Are there any?
You have Alan's proposal up there, do you not, on the land?
Yes, we do. Any questions for him from the board?
Is,
You wanna-
this land isn't under any of the conservation restrictions?
No, it's-
Easements?
It's land that's owned by the Farm Limited Partnership.
Okay.
Okay. Do
Okay.
you want to go board first or public first?
Public,
Okay.
go ahead.
Bob Carrasco. Information, I spoke to Johnny Chick last week, and he's in the process of selling the rest of his land to Portsmouth, but it's not sold yet, okay? There's something going on there, and I says, listen, John, do us a favor. If they don't wanna buy it, I think you ought to approach the selectmen in Greenland and see if they might be interested in buying it. And I'm thinking of a cemetery up there.
Okay, now what,
It's a 60,000 square foot lot, which is only an acre and a third.
I know that Portsmouth has received a $190,000 grant
Right,
to do it for water source protection.
right, and that was like a 50% grant.
Yes. So, but again, I think it's either within the 400-foot circle.
No,
That's
it's on,
why-
it's behind John's house,
Right,
The
it's
third
directly
piece
behind his house.
behind his
and
house.
A good chunk of it is within the 400-foot radius, which is why the city of Portsmouth was buying it for well.
Yeah, they want to protect the well.
Okay, but sure. If it doesn't, we
Yeah, I
absolutely
just
should.
thought, I mentioned it
Sure.
to John, and I said, let me know, John, I'll tell the board if they're interested.
Okay. So.
Nothing gained, nothing lost.
Questions. Has the land been pit tested?
No,
Okay. The reason I say is we looked at another parcel of land and found ledge 2 feet down. I don't think we're gonna find ledge 2 feet down in your property, but that would be a thing. We need to have a pit test to make sure that it was suitable. It probably has not been separately surveyed. It's not a separate.
no, and like I say, I spoke to Selectman DeRocky way back in February about this idea. We sold off our milking herd from the dairy a year ago. And we're working in the process of bringing back a small herd and funding a processing and bottling plant right on the farm. And we were thinking, instead of going way into debt with financing, that this one piece of property kind of sets itself off from the farm pretty easily. It would be a piece of property that we could do something with and fund our next venture without going into a huge bunch of debt.
Okay.
And the idea of a cemetery, when I was on the budget committee years ago, cemetery land was kind of a buzzword then.
Yes.
And I said, well, that would be a good thing. Sell a piece of land without residents encroaching more on the farm, which is wanted that little buffer from the actual working farm to keep the residents over there.
Okay. So
So,
let's talk
right,
a
Bob?
little.
Right.
Okay. So let's just talk a little about timing and what it would take. It would need to be pit tested, it would need to be surveyed, it would need to go through the planning board as a subdivision.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, with regard to paying for it, we don't have money set aside for it.
Yeah, that's what David was saying. It'd be probably another whole year cycle of town meeting and such as that if,
Okay, because, and that's key from your point, is to try to figure out
Yeah.
how quickly you can get it done, because certainly this could be brought forward this year as a proposed bond. It could, we still have time to do it.
Yeah.
But we don't have any money set aside. I suppose, in the meantime, if we went to work with the Charitable Trust Division and possibly a Cypre to change the allocation of some of their existing funds, in this particular case, what would be happening is that perpetual care money would be used in part to fund additional cemetery purposes. So
Which is what we were hoping.
that may be possible during this year. We'd have to work with Charitable Trust to figure that out. Because as you say, you're not going to need the principal of that fund in order to accomplish what you do in perpetual care. And so this would be a repurposing towards additional cemetery land.
Right, or in 19, an article to establish a capital reserve fund for cemetery land
Mhm.
and fund it 50% of it or, 30% of it from the fund balance of this year. And then next year, it would be a smaller amount.
Yes. Although anytime we go over 100, if we're into bonding, right?
No, no. No, you just have to have a
Well-
public hearing, but it's not a bond.
I'm saying if it were not funded out of current taxes, if we were borrowing that money anytime we're over 100.
Oh, if we were borrowing it, right.
Yes.
But if we were doing it, if you did it as a capital reserve with a deposit into it,
Yes.
you'd be okay.
So in round figures, we're talking 600,000 by the time we do survey and all that other stuff. And so this year, it would be the idea to put it into a capital reserve, you're
Yeah,
suggesting?
a good percentage of it. And
Okay,
then in 19, in March, the other half or the other percentage, and then it's spread over, the tax burden is spread over 2 years. And if
Yes.
it comes from fund balance both years, there's no tax burden to speak of.
yeah. In addition, at that point, if people thought this was a good idea, we could work hard to sell more lots early and pay things back more quickly.
The dynamics may not get us what we want. If you're looking for caskets, it should be decreasing over time as the generations are coming through because they're going more towards cremations. So yes, there's 8 acres there that could be used. We could try to sell lots for caskets. But in somewhere down the road, you're gonna set up this town for eons,
Right.
is what you're doing.
Yes.
With either cemetery land or, let's say you put, and I'll just use it as an extreme example, a firehouse out there, which is still right here in town. You will have land that you can use if you look at a long-term vision, in my mind. And this town is gonna need some land, for whatever. I don't know what it is, but I think we're gonna need land here. Right now, it's a cemetery issue, but I think we got further issues coming up. I don't know what they are. So that's all, that's what I would say. It's,
Okay,
it will be, yes, for caskets as you go down the path, but I think the dynamics allow you to use a portion of it for other things, and I think more and more people are gonna go towards cremations as time goes on. You're
okay.
just setting up town, that's what you're doing.
Do we have anything left in our town proximity capital reserve, or is that gone?
That was melded into land, to roads a few years ago.
Okay, so nothing in any of our current available funds. Okay. Fine, those are my questions, so I guess it's just our discussion.
Okay, Paul,
Dave, what do
Sure.
you get for a plot,
Depends on the size.
casket size?
It's right there on.
I don't have that information.
Oh, we didn't give that to you?
No.
Damn it,
A
Bob.
2-casket
You
lot
should've
is
spoke up,
$1,000.
Excuse me?
I remiss,
A
I'm sorry.
2-casket
Lot
lot
is
is
how much?
$1,000
1,000.
You better buy them now, I'll tell you. I just paid $2,500
for
in
2.
Calvary for my wife and I.
By the way, no real estate taxes on that either.
There is none.
Wow, $1,000. Cheap.
Alan also has made a suggestion that he can work with the town on us maybe purchasing just the frontage in the beginning for a certain cost or a certain price, and then allowing us to buy the next, few acres or whatever, and purchase it over a period of time and allow him to maybe even farm some of the back acres on for a while.
No, we were thinking the road frontage is the more important part of any piece of property.
Yes,
That eliminates the cemetery being, okay, now somebody tucked a house in behind it.
Right.
So that was, I mean,
so we could get the survey and subdivision work done, have lot 1 and lot 2.
correct, yeah, because David was saying, 8 acres, that's over 100+ years of cemetery land.
Oh, it's way over 100+ years.
So there was no sense of, getting enough needed to tie up a frontage so the road can't be encroached upon or developed upon. And as things go down the road of farming, the town every 50 so years could bring in another 4 acres, or whatever it would.
2 acres worth of land.
If we were able to set up the capital reserve and then use this time to go to Cypre, we might be able to pull off half of it right away.
See, that's exactly
Yeah, I
on the
mean,
path that Alan was on.
like I say, we want to fund our new venture
Mhm.
without going to Joe Blow Real Estate and say, hey, let's throw another 8 houses in here, because the town doesn't need any more houses.
Yeah,
And
right.
I actually have an interest from a developer in Boston that wants 100 acres of our back lot, basically to build housing for the Lonza and all the other
Yes,
increases that are coming into Pease.
yes.
There's gonna be 2,000 jobs there in 5 years.
Mhm.
People gotta live somewhere. I've already had, interest from a major developer in Boston looking at the whole farm.
Mhm.
And I said, no, we're not ready for there yet. We just, I'll move.
Are all 8 acres usable, or is there?
There's one corner that's wet, only because there's a culvert that comes from the west side of Newington Road into there. And the way we farmed it, we've made wheel ruts going this way when water wants to go that way. If it was graded and taken care of, it would, but there is a small, maybe quarter acre, half acre corner that's probably not usable.
There are no trees on it.
It's been used for farms, been corn in there here recently.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say, it slopes down. There's not a cemetery in this town that doesn't have a hill. I swear to God. But I think there's a lot of good fill for the town there too, from what I can see. Of course, it have to be tested, but that's something that we were always looking to use when we're doing construction and whatever's going on in the town and the roads and so forth.
Right, well, and when trees have to be removed for cemetery land, it takes 2 years for that land to be ready for the first casket. Because there's a whole compaction process, compaction process,
Yeah.
when trees and trees have been removed.
No, it's an open field. It's been rotated from corn to hay and back and forth for 120 years.
Any other questions, anybody? Well, I think, I think this is something that we need to delve into sooner rather than later, definitely.
So we'd like to have come back, we would like to have brought this to you sooner, but it has taken us time to try to figure
I
out
understand.
what the heck we think we got up there. Here's the bottom line. We've been all volunteers since, Christ was a corporal. That's a long time, and you get what you get with your volunteers. I'm overly challenged, and therefore, you're not gonna get probably the best from me that you might get from Michelle or Bob or somebody else who has been doing it over the years, or you might have somebody that's even, more of a, one of Jerry's kids running around out there trying to keep track of stuff. It's hard. And so we've done the best we can to give you where we're at. Yeah, I know, it's all good here. If you don't have a sense of humor when you're going through this shit, you gotta laugh at this stuff, man. You can't make this crap up. It's all true.
Yeah,
So, we're sorry, we're here telling you got 6 to 12 years, or 8 to 12 years, that's our best guess.
mhm,
I don't know, but if you wanna do caskets, I'm back to you.
yeah. And it does sound like something we need to consider immediately. I mean, and we have an opportunity that's presented to us that, a window that's open that we should probably take, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to get a hold of me, and see the property, go really look at it. I mean, it does, I showed these guys an aerial photograph. It sets itself off from the rest of the farm, with completely wooded area around it, so I've been at funerals up at the Caverly Cemetery up on 33. It's like having a funeral in a Walmart parking lot. It's just,
If you take a look at I think everybody has this map, you
Yeah.
can see it.
It's which lot is it?
yeah, it's this piece right here.
That one, okay.
Yeah, go poke it out to everybody.
That's me. Is that the one?
I'm trying to figure it out.
Right next to Frank Patterson's house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right on Newington Road, right over your door.
There's one.
Yeah, no, it'd be this piece right here.
Oh, okay,
This was Frank Patterson's house,
gotcha,
and
okay.
it's like, this is a wooded, I mean, see how it sets itself right off from the,
So right here.
yeah, that piece right there.
Okay.
You just put it out there.
Yeah, where, I mean, we never really did much to that tree line, cut it off.
There we go.
Well, I think if the rest of the board is in agreement, I think we ought to do whatever we need to do to get the wheels rolling on this.
Yeah, this makes sense.
All right? Any other comments from the public? Any other comments from the board?
The only other comment is I think we should have this discussion with the budget committee during this process right now.
Yep.
So that they understand as well.
That's what I did.
And we can gain some support for the idea of how we might eventually proceed this year with a warrant article.
Okay.
Would it help if Alan and I or the cemetery committee come to that meeting, or are you good with where we're at with it, or?
Well, I'd say to Chip and Karen, who are primarily working, and to Bob on the budget committee, however you'd like the presentation made.
I think you did a
Thursday?
good job tonight.
Yeah, no, but I think
For the budget
deliberative
committee.
session would be
Yeah.
key.
Thursday?
That's
Yeah, we
school.
could do that Thursday.
Not school?
No, school is tomorrow night.
School's Tuesday.
Thursday.
Town is
And
Thursday.
town is Thursday.
Okay.
I just want to go on the record, I'd like to see it as staged purchase.
Tomorrow.
I think that's something we can swing with everything else coming down the pike.
And I think that we can start working with them on their Cypre idea because it does seem that their finances are out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because at some point, if it's always been 50-50, those two funds should be fairly similar.
Well, we'll also find back in the Doug Brackett era, that was the era of the commingling. And I think that there was a settlement back then with charitable trusts that allocated funds. So I think there's going to be a file.
Right, I remember that the auditors, and it was Mason and Rich that were trying to untangle it.
But I'm pretty sure there was a settlement with charitable trusts.
Okay, because that was back when we elected trustee of the trust funds and called them cemetery trustees all at the same time.
Exactly. And, but I believe that there's a file to be found and that we can start working forward with them about saying, look, it's not that the money's going anywhere. We're just looking to have it do its intended purpose, which is achieve cemetery results.
Okay. I got one comment. I think above and beyond great for the town, I think another good for the town is that it helps Alan Smith kind of downsize and upgrade and keep that a dairy farm. That's,
That's huge.
yeah, that's just some, you know, the disappearance of it.
And Alan came to us.
I don't want any
Just-
houses
win-win
across the
way.
street from me, Alan.
What's that?
I don't want any houses across the street from me.
Well, I don't know, maybe trailers.
Anybody wanna buy a nice house? It's for sale.
Okay, so you'll address this at the budget meeting?
Thursday night would be ideal.
All right,
We'll put them on, I'll put them on first.
okay, all right. And do you want them to show up at the budget meeting?
Sure.
Okay, all right.
They know more about it than we do.
Yeah.
6:30,
8:30?
6.
6:30.
I would have been late, okay. 6:30 on Thursday.
8:30's getting close to bedtime.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for letting us talk and
Well,
present
thank
to you.
you for
and,
a very
Say,
good
it's been-
presentation.
You know, everybody wants to go walk in the mud and look at it.
Let me grab my garbage away from you guys. Thank you very much for hearing us out, I appreciate it. And Bob,
Thank you.
Casco, I'm so sorry for not giving you a copy, I didn't realize, sir.
All right, Bill.
God bless you.
He does every day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You want me to do it again?
Yes, I do.
Same thing?
I can do it.
Here, neighbor, you can have mine.
All right. Thank you, folks. Let's get out of here. Thank you.
Hey.
Okay, let's move on to the approval of minutes from November 12th. Does anybody have any amendments, suggestions, comments, or I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of Monday, November 12th, 2018, as written.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Under old business, anything in Copley?
We were going to go with the chief. Oh, Copley for an update? No,
Yeah.
no update.
Right, yeah. Anything on your end, Paul?
No.
No, okay. Fire, yes.
I just want to pause for a moment and recognize Senator-elect Tom Sherman here. And we've been
I can update
speaking a
you.
little bit.
This is the appropriate
Okay.
time where I can wait.
Welcome
this-
to our meeting, thank you.
He can give us a Copley update.
Okay, all right.
The only, is it okay to go ahead? Thank you for letting me come and be part of this. Currently, what's happening with Coakley at the legislative level is there's a statutory commission. Actually, there are several, but the one that's most pertinent to Coakley is on the cancer cluster. So it's the 484, HB 484 Commission. And that commission has been focused on Coakley and on the water issues, and just generated its final report, which I can get to you if you're interested in that.
Okay.
It's actually, it's an interim report. It's a 4-year commission, and it's finished 2 years of work. And I sit on that as the representative of Rye, and I'll switch to, hopefully, as the representative of the Senate on that. And the major conclusions are that the deep bedrock study needs to continue, which is about a 2-year time frame, and that's looking at fissures, so that intervention that would be necessary would be based on the science of where is the water actually going from the landfill. Second issue, which will likely be addressed legislatively, is the runoff into Barry's Brook, which is surface water. And stop me if I don't understand these different terms, but I think you do. The surface water runoff into Barry's Brook, which is fairly highly contaminated, it does not exceed EPA standards for surface water, which aren't technically standards, they're advisories. The EPA has all sorts of language that nuances all of this. So their advisory levels are well beyond what's happening in Barry's Brook, but fish sampling show that there are actually significant levels of PFAS, which are the contaminants in Barry's Brook. In the fish down by Little Harbor. So the concern that many of us have, and this is going to be reflected in legislation, is that it's unacceptable to have significant levels of contamination into Barry's Brook, which is contaminating that watershed at an ongoing level, even if it doesn't exceed EPA standards. So the state of Michigan has set their own state standards for surface water, and that would be a way to make it possible for DES to actually intervene and stop the flow of contamination, which can occur. Another area which you are almost certainly aware of is that the DES dropped their 1,4-dioxane drinking water standard. And so while the 1,4-dioxane levels in the homes on Breakfast Hill Road and at the golf course did not see a significant increase in their concentrations of 1,4-dioxane, the levels dropped below what they had previously said were acceptable. So now that is forcing Coakley into remediation. Trying to think if there's any other major issues. I'll get you that report. But those are, so right now what's happening, and you may all be aware of this, is they're providing bottled water. And they're in the process of a plan for remediation. The ongoing issue, which Representative Malloy and I are very interested, as well as Representative Lee, we met yesterday, and we are very concerned about is the issue of municipal water versus filtration for all the homes up on Breakfast Hill. And I know we talked briefly about that, but I think that would be, we really should have a more in-depth discussion so that we know where you all stand on that. And my goal, and as is Representative Malloy's goal, is to make sure that that's not, I guess the easiest way to say it is it's not the fault of the town of Greenland or the residents of the town of Greenland that they are now being confronted with contaminated water. And so it's hard for me to conceive of them being forced to bear the brunt of the cost of that remediation, whether it's filtration or municipal water. The major downside of filtration is that it continues to utilize all these private wells which are drawing water away from Coakley and have the risk of expanding the plume of Coakley, which is, of course, the last thing we want to do. So lots of issues. The short term is we are likely going to be having legislation that will remediate or ask for remediation of the surface water coming off Perry's Brook. And the second one is there will be more legislation on, depending on where DES sets their drinking water standards for PFAS, which they are required to do in January of this year. So there may be some legislation altering that response.
Perhaps you could shed some light on the golf club. As I understand it, they're not going to be allowed to open up for rentals until they have water. I may be in error on that, but I thought
that would be completely under the purview of DES. I can find out for you. I'd be happy to.
So when they don't have the income from that, who are they going after, Coakley? Or
the responsible party would be Coakley Landfill Group. And that's who they would seek compensation, whatever the right term. I'm not a lawyer, but I know there's a good term for that.
for money?
Money.
We also have not yet received the Underwood report.
Correct.
When I say the Underwood report, I mean the study that Underwood is doing for the city of Portsmouth to determine where the water line would go and what it would cost.
Right, we have the preliminary, the draft report, which we received 3 or 4 weeks ago, that we shared with the board, but we don't have any numbers. And the numbers were to be coming anytime now.
Okay. And that's going to be in the roughly $15 million plus range?
Yeah.
We don't know yet,
But it'll be breaking it out into the different phases, the main line with the 2 primary neighborhoods that need to get done, Berry Farm and Stone Meadow Red Fox.
yeah.
Or Red Oak.
And at least so far, what Portsmouth has said to us is that they don't believe that they should bear any of the expense.
Correct, because the levels do not exceed.
Yeah.
Right, and I understand that. I think from a common sense standpoint, you're talking about trying to contain this plume.
Right.
And this is the argument that I will always make.
Right, well, this board has been clear right from the very beginning that all our efforts are preventative.
Right.
We don't want to be reactive and put the whole street on bottled water.
And that's the whole thing about the surface water coming down Berry's Brook. I mean, you know, this is all prevention so that we don't end up like Barnstable County and Cape Cod, which is currently, their aquifer is fully contaminated from firefighting foam, which is, you know, the same stuff. That's where this is all coming from. It's all PFAS. Not the 1,4-dioxane, it's the PFAS. So the issue, I agree 100% with what you're talking about. I think the city of Portsmouth is not by itself the responsible party. The Coakley Landfill Group is the responsible party of which, and I know you know this, so I'm just saying that's why the city of Portsmouth is going to likely say, no, if anyone wants this, they're going to have to pay for it. And the agreement is going to be which also, by the way, Newington is 6%, 5% of that.
Yes, 5.5% of Coakley landfill.
So the idea is to negotiate our way through this, but to make sure, my goal is number one, to prevent further contamination. Number two is to make sure that the folks in Greenland are not stuck with the smell.
Right, and one little part that further complicates it is that Greenland can't apply for the grant because we don't own that water system. Only Portsmouth can apply for the grant.
And when you say the grant, you're talking for the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund.
It is a catch-22, and, you know, of course, just to add the insult to injury is, it's your water. I mean, exactly. So, I get it. And I think this is going to be a process, but we need to get through it as quickly as possible.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be a process too, but I think we're right. So, you know, and we keep it on the agenda every single meeting that we have. And I appreciate your coming
And I will make sure that you all have my cell, which is by far, I'm over 60, so email is good, but it's not as good as using a phone or texting. But I obviously can't make it to every single select board meeting.
Right.
But if you all need me here, I'll come.
well, we've always got Dennis here. It seems to be making up to most of
Right
it.
on that, don't put it recorded, so don't say.
Okay. I mean, it's out on the internet.
Well,
Well, thank you for your input and your support. We really
You bet.
appreciate that.
And of course, there's also Route 33, which I'm sure is another topic. But
Yes.
Don't go there.
Okay.
no.
Any other questions from the board?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the fire department. We'll start with the building committee report. Paul, would you?
Since our last selectmen's meeting, the fire department building committee did meet again to consider a potential challenge that we had from one of our bidders who thought that we had scored it incorrectly. And the committee met, considered the documents again, and rejected the challenge. And so therefore, we continue in our recommendation to go along with, as the selectmen have voted, to select Ritchie Construction. John Ritchie is our design build contractor for that process. That being the case, his next deliverable is a guaranteed maximum price, and I believe the date is December the 7th.
I think it's 7th, yeah.
With the idea that the fire department building committee will be coming back to the selectmen potentially on the 10th, making a recommendation to proceed forward in the budget committee process and towards a bonding hearing towards funding a guaranteed maximum price.
Yeah, and the building inspectors requested that the meeting on the 7th be postponed and that the building committee meet at 6:30 on the day, on the 12th. 10th, just before the selectmen's meeting.
So that they can,
Do
so
the
that the committee
engineering
can make.
numbers, yeah, and do everything all in one meeting.
And then that'll let us move forward to the budget committee process and then potentially to a bonding hearing for whatever the numbers turn out to be.
Right, and just so the board knows, the board of selectmen know, if they decide with, when you have that number, if you decide to go with the bonding process, you need to decide that night, only because we have a 10-day clear advertising period that we have to have, and the hearing is set for January 10th. So we have to back things up, and we need to,
Yeah, they're very specific calendar dates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and there's a bunch of holidays in between, so we need to be like,
Right,
Okay,
on the button.
keep on task.
so that is our plan.
All right, any questions regarding that from the board? All right, I know this is new business, but seeing as how we're on the topic, the fire department, I will address this now. The board all received an email regarding the fire chief's request to deviate from ordinary policy and enter into discussions with prospective fire employees. Mr. Sanderson has included the email from the regarding the FLSA documentation that explains how the exemption would apply. So, Chief, do you want to?
At this point, I have a firefighter, EMT, medic, has interest in one of our full-timers, has a lot of experience, has 15 or 20 years, and some volunteer, and some is full-time, some is part-time. And there was a couple of things brought up. Right now, this particular person has 3 weeks vacation accrued. The way, from what I'm understanding, the accrual of the vacation time is done per weekly, is that correct?
Per month.
Per month?
Per month. Employees earn, you start at 2 weeks, and you earn 6.6 hours per month.
This particular person's looking for us to give him some vacation hours beforehand, because seeing he's gonna lose once he decides to terminate his other job.
Excuse me, is this for a fire lieutenant position? Or
This is for a
something-
fire captain position. This is one higher than that,
Okay.
all right?
Our personnel policy does allow, even though it's accrued monthly, it allows an employee to take vacation time in advance of their accrual. So he could take like the week off before he had a full week, you know. As long as at year end, you were even.
Okay. And the other question was asked about is also on the sick leave. Can that be done the same way?
Well,
That's never been done in
That's true. My
advance.
thought would be that because we're dealing in a non-union situation in a very small department, it would be possible to do individual employee contracts if that was the will of the board. Okay? In the same way that we have, for example, one town administrator, one contract. Okay? This is the only person who will be a fire captain. There could be one contract. And so the theory was to give the fire chief the greatest amount of latitude possible to negotiate an agreement that could be workable within the financial constraints that we have, but change the terms and conditions of employment such that it becomes attractive enough to attract a person in
Right, so
a contract.
right, a contractual employee, does that require to be salaried exempt?
No,
Okay.
no,
They can just have their own basic personnel policy for that one person.
still a town employee,
Okay.
okay? It's
Don't
just
you got the same problem you have in the private industry? You got people that got 3 weeks vacation, they've built up sick time and
Yes, sir.
they want to carry it over. The only question I have, what happens if they leave for less time than a year, something like that? They terminate the employment.
and that could be dealt with in the contract itself.
That'd be my only thing, but yeah, the private industries had to go that way. If you got 4 weeks vacation, you get 4 weeks when you join the other company.
Yeah, my intent was just to give the chief the maximum flexibility to negotiate something that was workable within the financial constraints we have.
And the other question that was asked is right now, what we're doing is 4 days on, 4 days off. In an 8-week cycle, it averages out to 42 hours a week. That's what we would like to figure out, a payment of 42 hours a week. Anything over their scheduled hours would be overtime if they happen to be on a call, or the call went further than their time they were supposed to be at work.
But also, the material that I gave you allows you, instead of doing it on a 7-day pay period, allows you to do it on a 28-day pay period, so that you can work it in such a way that you're reducing overtime. You're increasing coverage and reducing overtime because of the way that you can schedule.
Right.
Because if we do the 42 hours a week, the weeks that they're working 48, there's not gonna be any overtime. But the week there's only 36, it's gonna bump it to 30 to 42.
Right, so that you're not defining the pay period as 7 days, paying overtime over 40 all the time. You can do it and average it over the 28-day pay period and reduce your overtime exposure.
Right.
It's
So
a
the
special.
week that they're doing 36 or 32, 36, would they be expecting,
42.
they wouldn't get overtime till they hit 42 that week?
No, they would get overtime
At
after
37?
After their scheduled hours.
So their 37th hour that week would be overtime.
Actually, if you adopt the,
Right, it wouldn't if we adopt that,
right, if you do that, then you figure it only at the end of the 28-day period.
right, which I don't think that's what you're looking at.
Well, I'm just saying,
Maybe I don't understand it either, so.
it just gives the maximum flexibility. Because so many people now want to work, say, 3 24-hour shifts.
Right.
You know, and some of that is sleep time that's not compensated. You know, but you're able to work it out and get that maximum flexibility.
What, their sleep time is not compensated?
It depends. You're allowed to take an 8-hour sleep period out of there. Obviously, if they go out on a call or something like that, they are compensated. But if you have them on for 24 hours plus, then at that point, an 8-hour sleep period is extracted.
Perhaps I missed the boat here somewhere, but you were trying to hire 2 lieutenants. When did we go to a captain?
The reason I went to a captain is the experience of this gentleman that I'm looking at.
Okay, so this is an
Hopefully-
individual case.
Hopefully, if this is an individual case, hopefully, I'm looking at it to go maybe a little bit further from when I decide to terminate myself and figure out which way I'm going. I'm looking to advance this particular person at this point.
Would we then be just going for 1 lieutenant?
There'd be one more as lieutenant. There will not be a second captain in the fire department hired full-time at this time. So it'd be 1 lieutenant, 1 captain.
I was also going to say that part of your answer is during this year, you've gone out on 2 separate occasions advertising, and you haven't been able to get qualified candidates.
The problem with the qualified candidates right now is there's so many jobs out there, it's really kind of crazy. If you put a firefighter's job up, you're lucky to get 1 or 2 people, and that's the big cities not getting many people either, because there really isn't a lot of people looking for this type of, there you go. But,
Or maybe to relocate place to place.
right.
Yeah.
And again, we are kind of a starting department, so, everybody's looking at that also. A lot of departments work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 5 days off. It's a pretty good schedule. We're looking to work 4 days on, 4 days off.
Also, 2 other factors that you mentioned to me, and you could tell others, how many volunteers are you able to have right now?
Well, the volunteers are just about dwindled right out. There's maybe not even a handful that show up if we have something, structure fire, I do not, I want them to show up, but they're getting fewer and far between.
And what's happening with your ability to access per diem personnel?
Per diem's doing the same thing, because anybody who's, if you have a per diem person, all they're trying to do is get experience to move on to get into a full-time department. And that's gonna go to my next one after this one.
So with all of these factors, that was my motivation to go along and give him the maximum flexibility to negotiate.
Sure. All right, are there any other questions that the board has? You want to make a motion?
On the material there, I had the motion. Now I have to get my glasses on. So. The motion was to authorize the fire chief to enter into discussions with prospective fire employees regarding scheduling of time that deviates from the ordinary Greenland personnel policy. Specifically, the chief is authorized to discuss and conditionally offer scheduling that complies with Section 7K of the Fair Labor Standards Act for up to a 28-day work schedule.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in
You don't
favor?
understand that, do you?
Go ahead, what's that?
It's 28-day work schedule.
I didn't pick it up as a 28-day work schedule. He went further than I did. I figured it out, but it wasn't.
I'm just making, the other one's gotta do it, I just wanna make sure you understand it.
I will get it understood, how's that?
Works for me.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I have one other thing, I have one of my personnel that works a lot of evenings. doesn't live in the area, so he stays at the fire station. He ended up with a support dog. So there's times that the support dog would be there overnight in proper grade or whatever when he wasn't there. The support dog, I have all the documentation of and have a certificate from the people who did this. And it is all documented. Karen was gonna do some.
I did.
Okay, you can explain. You and I haven't talked since then.
It's nothing I want to pull out in public
Okay.
that I'll give you, but it is a emotional support dog rather than a service dog. And the documentation allows or assists the person with an emotional support dog to get housing that doesn't allow pets or bring the dog on a plane. It does not require that it needs to be at work or that it needs to be specially trained or anything like that. It should not be able to go into an ambulance.
No, that's not what it was supposed to be. The problem I have of not supporting this is this particular person does 3 or 4 nights a week for me. For me to try to fill this 3 or 4 nights a week is gonna be very tough if we decide to do something else.
As a member of the public, I'm just curious, what is the problem with him bringing the dog here? Is it not allowed in the building? Is there?
Not allowed in the building.
There's a dog, you're not allowed to bring
Past
an
practice
animal
on
in
that
this
one,
building?
I'm not sure.
You what?
You're not allowed to bring an animal in this building?
Right.
That's just state.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen would have to waive that because the board did have a policy back,
Okay.
like 2005, 2006, no animals in the town office,
What idiot wrote that up?
except service dogs. This is not-
This is a
Right.
support. Is this person gonna be able to perform
Yes.
his duties?
Yes. If he can't perform his duties, I'll be the first one to admit it and say, have a nice day.
So what are your personal thoughts on this?
I'd like to see how this works out, and we'll, discuss it in maybe 2 or 3 months and figure it out from there.
Okay,
You can have that.
all right.
But I just wanted to make you aware, so someone walked in the fire station,
Right.
this was going on. I don't want a bunch of dogs or animals in the fire station, I don't want this. But I don't,
Chickens?
no, but yeah, but at this point, I feel if this is a support animal for this particular person, that needs some support, I'd like to see how it works out.
Okay. My only concern would be that I wouldn't want the dog to bite somebody,
Bingo.
you know? That's my.
The dog would be in the cage when other people were in the building.
Okay.
What kind of dog is it?
Pit bull.
Pit bull?
I really haven't seen it. I really don't know. A pit bull. You already got one of them, Paul.
Big dogs.
Any comments? Anybody?
Do we need a motion to
We
waive
would- we'd
the
have to waive it,
requirement
yeah.
for maybe a 4-month trial?
The dog is in a training program also.
Yeah, as I was thinking of, I was thinking 60 days as a waiver.
Okay.
Yeah, and you report back to us. If
Sure.
you have nothing to say, then it's good.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make you aware of it.
Okay, then I would make a motion that we grant the fire department a 60-day waiver on the no animal policy, subject to further direction from the fire chief, such that if there is a particular issue, you're authorized to take care of it immediately, But other than that, please report back in 60 days.
Second.
Further discussion? Jesse, you got a question mark there?
No, I got no question mark.
Okay, all right. All right, all in favor?
Aye. Nay.
One nay, okay. Motion passes.
Anything else you need to get it run?
Huh?
Anything else you need to be?
Paper all set.
6:30.
Okay. I'm first one, right, Bob?
Yes, you are, 6:30.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the library architect's invoice.
This is for the services rendered October 1st through October 31st in the amount of $12,947.72. And this will be coming from the capital reserve fund, not the bond proceeds. And the manifest here transfers everything else that was bond proceeds to capital reserve. So the bond proceeds are completely intact.
I noticed there were 2 other invoices in that particular manifest.
Yeah, which those are the ones that we're moving.
Okay, now, have they been paid already? And you're just transferring funds?
Changed per board, the bond proceed one, yes.
Okay,
This is a new one, November 14th, and Peter Laughlin's is a new one.
okay. So that's legal fees of about $8,500, something like that. The 2 legal fees together.
Legal fees are $114.
Okay, and there was an $8,000.
The $8,000 is the bond counsel legal service.
Yes.
The Divine Willamette branch.
It just hasn't been paid yet.
Correct.
Okay. The problem I'm having with the library architect invoice is that I have not seen the underlying contract. So I still don't have any basis for evaluating the invoice. And so for that reason, I'm going to move that we table that portion here until we receive a copy of the contract so we can evaluate the requested invoice.
May I speak?
Yes, you may.
Marcia McLaughlin. We, as the library trustees, would like a written request for that and a specific reason why the contract.
Call it a right to know.
The contract, you all have the management of the land itself, and we understand that. The contract with the architect as well as with Bowen is for management of the project. And I do not believe that the selectmen have the authority of oversight in how the contract was written up to begin with, Paul.
May I just say that? I would make that request under the right to know law as a citizen. Okay, it's a public document. You're expending public funds. On the selectmen's side of things, this is coming so far from a capital reserve fund that we jointly manage. And so therefore, I would like to be able to take a look at that contract and determine whether the invoice is in accordance with the contract. That's all I'm saying.
We did give you the schedule of payments basis, the amount of work that was done. That was not sufficient at the time you all said it was, last March or whenever it was, whenever we gave you that.
Marcia, is there any reason why you don't want to show us the contract?
Absolutely not, other than, I've tried to be so, not fair, but not confrontational with the selectmen in all of this, where I feel that it has been very heavy-handed from the very first night of the vote, moving forward. It feels a lot like interference. It really does, for our authority as the trustees to manage our project. That's all. No, there is absolutely nothing in that contract that you all couldn't see. Again, I feel it's very heavy-handed, very heavy-handed.
And your comments are noted, but still, we would like to see, just as citizens, we would like to see the contract. I would like to see it, and I think we need something to substantiate our vote to approve these invoices. So, you know, they're asking that. I'm still asking other questions. I still have problems. I have not heard any response from the building inspector, from the planning board, from the police department, from the fire department, that any of these safety issues have been resolved or addressed as far as they're concerned.
Well, I would speak to, if I may, to the safety issue with the fire department. Going to the library before I came here this evening for this meeting, you couldn't get a fire truck through with the way, no, but what I'm saying, you're concerned about the fire safety and getting the fire truck in. You'd have to bring a fire truck up the wrong way, because you could never get that fire truck around if there was one vehicle parked back in that corner. So yes, and I do believe that there is a meeting scheduled with the fire department and with Mr. Presta and with the police chief. I'm not sure of the date.
Okay.
It has been discussed, I know. I will get you a copy of the contract.
Okay, and just because something's wrong, doesn't mean you leave it wrong, or you keep it wrong going forward. Again, I'm coming from a safety aspect from it. I've been forthright and honest with you about this right from the start. These are my concerns, okay?
I understand.
So, I just need to have those concerns addressed. I just have to, but go ahead.
Well, I have to take exception, because if this stopped right now, nothing's gonna change with these safety issues, are they?
I think we've gone off on a big tangent here. We have a motion on the table, do we not? I'd like to second that motion, and then we can talk about the fire trucks and the safety again.
Go ahead.
Let's stay at the task at hand. So we have a
Yeah,
motion.
I just
We have a motion
want
and a
to
second.
discuss one thing though, before we have the vote.
Well, he's right. We should do this. Go ahead, make a second. Go
I
ahead.
second Sanderson's motion.
All right,
Second
now-
Sanderson's motion.
Now we discuss.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank
This
you.
is part of your response to safety and all that other stuff.
I don't know what that is, Jeff.
It doesn't give me enough detail to tell me what it is either. But we still are having them theoretically providing information, the planning, the fire, police, and you're shutting your money off. I'll be honest with you, if I was the architect, I'd stop doing work till I get paid. That's my problem with doing this. And this has been since day one. I know nobody on this table agreed with the project, but citizens told us they wanted it. I think they probably made a big mistake, but that's my opinion.
I don't think we're actually saying we're not gonna pay the bill, we just wanna see some documentation. You know, read the fine print before you sign in. That's the way I-
Well,
that's
as
the
I
way
said,
see
I
it.
would be honest with you,
Why not?
I'd just say the Greenland's a bad risk on this project right now.
My motion was to table for exactly as Selectman Duraki said. Just want to look at the contract and make sure this payment's in accordance with the contract, because we are jointly responsible for the expenditure of the capital reserve. I didn't try to get into any other aspect of the project. If it's an appropriate payment under the contract, fine. And we're talking, I think, in 2 weeks, which I think is still well within the purview of a normal 30-day payment.
Well, actually, this bill is from October 10th, I believe, or something like that. It is from a while ago.
They got an
November
invoice dated
12th.
November 12th,
Oh, November 12th, then, okay, so.
from October 31st, so this would be,
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
no.
All right. 3 ayes and 2 nays.
While
Yes.
we're on the library, may I ask one other question? A month ago, we had correspondence that was presented from Tom Donovan from the Attorney General's office suggesting that the selectmen, the library trustees, get together to work to go to court. And those were his exact words, to go to court to resolve the issue on the septic and, property issues. We, as trustees, have now hired an attorney who has been supplied with all the background materials on what has happened from when Craig first started working with Attorney Laughlin moving forward. Have you, as selectmen, done anything to move forward on that?
That is news to us, so no, we have not made any moves on that because we didn't know what you were doing in the interim. Now, you've identified someone that you'd like us to work with.
Well, I guess so. Actually, we'd like Attorney Laughlin representing the town to work with him.
And I think he would probably say, because I've represented the library in the past, I can't just switch clients.
Well, actually, no, he has told us he can't work with us. And that is why we hired outside counsel. So if you all would just think about it and discuss it and let us know how we can move forward on this to resolve the septic issue, we really appreciate it.
Okay, I'll certainly take it at this point, since you now have identified someone who's working with you. Yes, that we should do our best to identify someone working with us so that we can move the process.
Right, because actually, I do think that Attorney Laughlin months ago did write, I can't think of the legal term.
Cypre.
Okay, that's it, but how to resolve this, I thought. So,
We know from the communication from Attorney Donovan at the Attorney General's office, the reason he's saying court is that that's an action in the probate court. It's called Cypre, C-Y-P-R-E-S, and what it is modifying the terms of the underlying trust to do what it is you'd like to do.
Right, and it sounds like he says it can be done, it just has to be legally approached.
Yes, and the basis of it is it has to be found to be in the public interest.
Okay, okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to liaison reports. Anybody have anything to report on liaisons?
I don't have anything specific other than the Pie Festival was a huge success. Thank you all very much for the off-site parking. It worked like a charm. We took over 100 vehicles off-site at a time when it was critical because with the snow, we never would have been able to park them the way we did before. And so with the cooperation of landowners and the town here, it worked. So thank you all.
Okay. Anybody else?
Nothing from the rec department today.
Okay. I will say that from the police department, October 3rd, they had a very successful night at McDonald's honoring some of the exceptional employees. Lieutenant Kirkle and Administrative Assistant Treader received awards this year. The officers have changed to a 10-hour, 4-day on and 3-day off schedule, with the exception of the chief, Lieutenant Kirkle, and the administrative assistant. Let's see if there's anything else here. They completed 2 9/11 name number change phases, which we're going to have to deal with shortly. All the officers completed their firearms qualifications in October and November. They had their annual voluntary physical testing for officers in the last week. 2 officers actually had their required 3-year fit test to keep their certification, and both passed. In October, they had a surprise lockdown drill at the school. And it was great to be able to have such great working relationship with the entire staff there. So that's the update on the police department. Okay. All right. Any other old business anybody would like to bring up? Under new business review of, go ahead.
I just got handed this today. I had Jim looking at the old fire station for making repairs to the outside of it. Karen's got it. She's going to be emailing it to you so you can look at it. I got nothing else to say about it other than I just looked at it. It's about a little over $50,000 for what they got in here, and I think there's probably a couple other things we may want to do if we put a warrant article together this year.
Okay. All right. Okay, town administrator's report.
And, I have a meeting on December 11th that Rockingham Planning Commission has put together to rediscuss the Rails to Trails program. The state has made a new offer to Pan Am to purchase the line. Pan Am has made a counter offer, so before the state takes it to the next step, they want to hear from the towns to discuss how interested towns are in this Rails to Trail program. I pulled the old documentation from the summer when they worked on it before. And if Greenland is interested in participating in this Rails to Trail program, the agreement specifically outlines that the town is responsible for the development and creation of the trail, and then the annual maintenance upkeep. They were very clear in the meetings that the annual maintenance and upkeep is generally taken care of by the volunteers. The rail community takes care of it. The initial cost estimated for Greenland section is $176,000.
To do, what's that by us?
The view of Coakley. Essentially.
To develop the trail, a trail along the rail bed,
Which is right through the Coakley land.
which is very wet.
Yeah.
There's big signs, don't drink the water.
Great place to take your dog.
That's,
But, I mean, I will get a lot more information at the December 11th meeting. But each community will have an agreement to sign and a funding commitment. So this is just something for the board to kind of chew on.
And that would have to be a warrant article, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I'm chewing it. I'm all done chewing.
No.
It's less than 2 miles.
Huh?
It's
It
less
is.
than 2 miles.
It is less than 2 miles.
Yeah.
The board and tax and land appeals that I wrote about, ABC Portsmouth, which is the old H&H Oil property, they had filed a 2017 abatement for taxes, but through a company that does this for them. The initial filing wasn't signed by the property owner as required. And then 2 weeks after the deadline, I received a duplicate copy of that abatement application that had been signed. So when the checklist came in from BTLA, that it had gone to BTLA, we were required to send in copies of the abatement application that was filed and any comments or notes we had. So I highlighted the fact that it hadn't been signed by the deadline, and that the company representing them had certified on the bottom that when they signed and sent it in, that they had received the property owner's signature as the agent. So when I pointed that out, BTLA set up a hearing that was scheduled for December 10th at 10 a.m. to determine whether or not the appeal should be dismissed because of the irregularities on the signature. And so then I received a letter on Wednesday from ABC Portsmouth withdrawing their appeal. So that abatement matter is over. Comcast, it's fixed now, but Comcast internet and email is not operational from Thursday morning, a week ago, Thursday morning through Friday afternoon. It was very hard for us to function. Our phones were working, fortunately, because they were also on Comcast. But it was a problem on a pole, and then it was a scheduled maintenance. Doug Poulin, our IT guy, was very good, really pushing Comcast to get the problem solved. And we really appreciated the patience that residents got because they couldn't register vehicles. There were so many people who had emailed with questions, which happens on a regular basis, and we couldn't get them. And even the staff was great because when it finally came up Thursday afternoon, we were all swamped. But it really showed us how dependent we are on communications through the internet now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tax bills, and we knew this would happen, the tax bills with the tax rate had gone out. The average increase was like $512. So there's been a lot of residents that were coming in asking if what the rate went down, why did my bill go up? So I wrote an article based on answering those questions, explaining that the spending from 18 is what's impacting the increase in 18, highlighting that it was the town we had 3 new positions, 2 fire positions and a police position. The school had full-time kindergarten, tuition increase to Portsmouth High School, 3 new teachers, and special education costs. So trying to break that out, for them. The questions really kind of stopped at that point. It is posted on our Facebook page and the website. But the tax collector was getting a lot of heat.
the 2 new fire positions, so we didn't fill them.
No, but it's still appropriated, and a lot of that funds will lapse to fund balance as of December 31st. But because it was approved in March, we have to raise by taxes the amount approved, not necessarily the amount that will ultimately be spent.
Any questions on the, okay. All right, let's move along to the hiring of the town administrator. Before we get into this stuff, I'd just like to make an observation. When I first became a selectman, I went to what they had back then, which was called the Selectmen's Institute, which was a great thing. I mean, it taught us a lot. It was an 8-week cram course type of thing. And you probably went to it, and Paul was
One of the teachers.
instructor on it and everything else. And one of the things that the courses it taught us was protocol as a selectman, all right? And I think this is important because I think this kind of galvanizes the selectmen together. One of the things that said that is, if one of the selectmen wants to put something on the agenda, and I think what you did was the right thing to do, you're heading in the right direction, but if one of the selectmen wants to put something on an agenda, run it by the chairman of the board. The chairman of the board ultimately has the final say on what goes on the agenda and what doesn't. And the reason I say this is so that you don't run into redundancy and that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. Because I had asked Paul about a week and a half ago if he would go to MRI also and do exactly what you did, Chip. So
I went to the liaison and he asked him what he thought about it, and I asked Karen if she or anything's been noticed, we'll make the phone call.
Yeah. In the future, though, when you guys are selectmen, whoever is chair, it's good to run it by the chair just to make sure you don't run it, you avoid redundancy. I think it's a good way to run it, and I think it's a cohesive effort for the entire board. So let's just say if Jim's chair and Chester has an issue he wants to put on the agenda, goes to Karen, but he also goes to Jim just to make sure Jim knows what's going on. The right hand knowing what the left hand's doing. But I mean, you went in the right direction because we were doing the same thing.
I figured one of these two might know.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to run that by you before we start this. But anyway, maybe you want to, I was going to have Paul do it, but if you want to just briefly go over what MRI had come up with.
Well, just going through reading it, the contract's basically right in front of us, so I'm not going to read it. They're looking at a fee of $5,500 plus they figure about $1,000 in advertising. And the only question I had is how many final candidates do we want to have a background check on?
Okay.
That's $1,000 a pop.
Right. I can clarify that a little bit.
Okay.
The process for the 5,500 includes the recruitment, contacting people, getting applications in, interviews, essays, and basic background checks. And so then they do basic background checks on the top 5. They would bring those top 5 resumes, et cetera, to the board with essays and all, for this board to reduce it to 3. And then the 3 would be in front of could be in front of a community interview panel with the board. And then for the additional $1,000, they would do the complete, thorough background check on the top candidate.
All right, so the original amount covers the original background check enough out because there's just
right. That's more of an in-depth, much deeper.
Yeah. Okay, now I understand that.
Okay.
And what you have there is exactly what I found when I spoke with Alan Gould, who's the principal of MRI. The only additional information I can give you is this, that they estimate it takes 90 to 120 days to go through the process, which would be after the time that Karen will have moved on. So the next question I had for him was, do you have possibly the services of an interim town administrator to cover while this process is going on? And so he is checking on that to see who might be potentially available. But what he told me was that whoever they might select, they would not have the same financial officer capabilities that Karen has brought to this. So that if we needed, for example, to file MS forms following the end of town meeting, normally they would bring in a CPA for a day to do that, and that would be the cost of filing those forms. But otherwise, exactly the same.
And I would have no problem helping to come in and file those forms.
Yeah, thank you.
Prepare them for the board signature, because it's all electronic now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, one of the questions that I have is this something we should try to project what the cost would be and bring it up before the budget committee?
Well, I think,
In other words, is this gonna be a $20,000 project? Is this gonna be?
Well,
6,500.
No, that's without an interim town administrator coming in.
Yeah. What Alan Gould told me was that normally during an interim period, they don't have a person in full-time. They have a person coming in 2 or 3 days a week as needed to resolve any particular issues, getting ready for selectmen's meetings, that sort of thing. It's an hourly basis, and he wasn't sure what the hourly basis would be. It depends upon who might be available. Usually it's someone who is an experienced town administrator who's retired and is doing it on a part-time basis.
Okay.
But, you know, if the process proceeds along in the 90 to 120 day time frame, and you decided to start the process now, you know, you probably are looking at about 60 days or so of interim service, something like that. You know, and that would be a couple of days a week getting through into the deliberative session and then finally voting. And then filing forms saying what has the town voted for.
Okay. Go ahead.
Question based on if within the next town budget there is a salary established for a town administrator and that town administrator is not in that position, is that salary money available to cover? Could he use to cover these expenses?
The answer is
not
yes.
to have a presentation before budget committee to ask for more money?
The answer is yes.
Good question, yeah. But I think we still need to section aside how much we estimate it's gonna cost to bring that to the budget committee, though. How do you do this? I don't know. Maybe we could.
actually, it might even be cheaper, I would think, if it's part-time than a full-time administrative salary.
Well, I think it would be cheaper.
In that time, so, I don't know how to figure it, because you don't know how much they're gonna work.
No, you don't.
If you were doing just as a guesstimate, I would put in $500 a day, 2 days a week.
Max. It's a quiet period,
Yeah.
and that's why I don't want to get into the non-public issues of it, but why I agreed to stay through the public hearing, because the budget committee generally finishes their work at the public hearing. The budget to be posted will be finished the next day. So once the budget is posted, between that period and deliberative session, nothing happens.
Yeah. And the hard work of the warrant has already been done.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's a quiet period between then and deliberative session. The boards generally or historically don't want to take any big actions because they want to wait till the new board is in place. And it's like the campaign time.
Would you be interested in staying through to the session just to retain that continuity in the budget? Because it's the questions that always come up.
Not on a full-time basis. Because at that point, I was looking at, right around the first of the year, starting to look for a job.
Okay.
So I want flexibility if I can go on interviews and, I need to start looking.
Okay, so you've got 55 and 1,000 for a background check.
Plus advertising.
So.
Yeah, plus advertising, which is estimated about $1,000.
So, would you be safe in if I threw out $15,000 to give to the budget committee, or do you think?
I do think that's safe.
I think
that you can you'd be starting this process in 2018. So the 6,500, which would be
2019, do you mean?
no, 2018.
Start
6,500
process now.
in 2018 you have
Take the money out
available.
of them.
So you'd really only be looking for approximately 10,000 in 19,
Okay, all right,
max.
okay. So Chip, you can,
So if I'm understanding what I'm looking at, we're looking at 6,500 to sign a contract with MRI right now. Okay, just making sure. Very wet day today.
okay,
I move to approve the hiring of MRI in the amount of $6,500 to manage the search for a town administrator.
Okay, second.
have a motion, a second, any further discussion?
We don't want 7,500, 55 plus 1,000 for advertising, plus 1,000 for complete
Well,
background?
that's what I was checking. I thought I had 75.
And that, you wouldn't need the 1,000 for the complete background
Until 19?
until
19, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay, all right. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you,
Well, there comes the
gentlemen.
fun stuff.
We have the annual policy review and approval. You know, when I was reading through this, I'd just like to make a note that I think it's really important for the town personnel to understand the indemnification clause, because as we all know, we've had attorneys sitting out there threatening to sue us personally. You know, if we react in certain ways. I think it's important to know that they cannot do that. It's a joke, so they can threaten you all you want, but
Well, they can sue you, but that you're indemnified.
You're indemnified, exactly.
I do have a question on that, though. Oh, you had mentioned the exception to that. I'd like to know what that is about, and if we should instruct our representative to perhaps pursue legislation to take that away. I don't think it's fair to people who volunteer, I say volunteer, to earn this whopping $3,000 a year.
8 cents an hour.
Okay.
To risk being sued. I don't know how that ever passed in the first place. But
Well, actually, what you see, and I was glad you put the extra explanatory material in there too, because what it is saying is you're indemnified so long as you're acting within the scope of your position. So therefore, what's really important, for example, is for a police chief not to try to fight fires, for a building inspector not to try to fight fires. That's when it's outside the scope of your general authority, and that's when you're not covered.
Or if it's with malicious intent.
Yes. Okay. We definitely need an indemnification policy. We've had one. The only question I had about this material was that we had a 1976 warrant article, and you'll notice in the material the statute talks about it being a governing body policy. We've done it several times. So this is what happened in '76, but we also have had it done several times since.
Right, we did it again, we did it last year, and it's scheduled, it's for periodic review. And most of these policies are for either annual, 2 of them are annual, but others are periodic review. What I'm trying to do is some housekeeping to make sure that everything is like
Yeah.
done.
The other difference between '76 and now is that you're allowed to cover many more people, which is also your intent. We want people on our recreation commission to be covered. We want people who are appointed as well as elected. So that was an improvement that was made in the statute in the intermediate years. So the only reason that you wouldn't be indemnified is if you're somehow doing something you weren't authorized to do. You know, and again, a lot of it has to do with discretionary decisions. We make discretionary decisions every meeting, you know, and we know that because sometimes we don't agree, and that's fine. But we exercise our discretion so long as we're acting in good faith, deciding on the things we're supposed to decide upon, we're covered. It's only when you go off the reservation and do something you're not supposed to be doing.
Okay.
okay.
All right, so we have 5 motions. And we have 5 selectmen, so. I'll start with you.
Okay, going up here on, get to the top of it. The first one here was the.
Capital asset and depreciation policy. And this has been updated based on recommendations of the auditors. We were inventorying, before I made these adjustments, we were inventorying things $1,000 and above, or both, limit was 1,000. So we're not, and even buildings is set $1,000. So these are reasonable limits on what we should inventory, what we should capitalize, or what needs to be depreciated.
Okay, so I'd like to move we approve the capital asset and depreciation policy as updated.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Chester?
Purpose of the fund balance policy is to establish a key element of the financial stability of the town by setting guidelines for the fund balance. The fund balance provides cash flow liquidity for the town's general operations. And I would move to approve the annual fund balance policy.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Jim, next.
I move to approve the annual investment policy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Chip,
Move to approve the annual identification policy.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Paul again?
I'd like to move that we approve the purchasing policy as recommended by our accountants.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, let's move along to encumbrances for 2018.
Okay, these are the first two that we have. There'll be a couple more at the December 10th meeting, December 12th, whatever it is, to close out the year. But these two, the first one is repairs to the snack bar at Crasco Field in the amount of $4,100. That's a warrant article. And then for the, call that account, the education incentive, not education incentive, the, what do we call, staff development account, requesting to encumber $665.50. That's Wayne Young. Officer Young is enrolled in a college course that starts in January 3rd. So we're encumbering, we have $2,500 in that account. So if we encumber that from this account, from this year, he can then have more classes towards his degree in 19.
Go ahead.
I have a question on the 300th committee.
Yeah.
We've got 3,000 that was approved by the town. We had a $500 donation.
The donation doesn't lapse.
That doesn't lapse.
That doesn't lapse until until it's used.
I haven't seen the final bill, but it's going to be in about 1,200, so we're going to need to come to you and give you the figure of what's remaining to be encumbered.
To be encumbered, it has to have a contract. So you need to pre-spend it.
Was that a warrant article? I don't remember.
No, that was in the budget.
It's a line item in the budget.
I thought we had most of that spent.
Well,
We're slipping
she
on
lowered the price. We got right on the price.
Order your shirts or something.
Yes.
All right.
Get a contract on the shirts at least.
All right.
Okay?
Yep.
So you'll get that.
I knew that. We had something we were spending it on.
Yeah.
I'll squeeze that in. Selling Christmas trees. Right, and we'll go over again.
If you need
I've
some,
got enough to do, right?
if you need some help getting that done, let me know.
It's getting close to 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna move to approve the request encumbrances for repairs to the snack bar at Crasco Field, the amount of $4,100, and college tuition for Wayne Young, the amount of $665.50.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Before we turn that page, how are we meeting the 24th?
Well, we'll get on to that, yeah.
I saw that today and I said, I
Yeah.
gotta remember about that.
Okay, let's go to the veterans credits.
I'd like to move to approve veterans credit in the amount of $500 for the resident of 28 Cherry Hill Drive.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
That's effective in 2019, correct?
It is, he is also, when we get to the abatements in a couple of meetings, he has filed for an abatement on his 2018 taxes for this same amount due to the late filing. It's totally up to the board. He's lived here over a year and just didn't realize that it didn't automatically follow him.
I don't have a problem with it.
Well, the abatement isn't in front of you yet.
Yeah, right.
I'd be afraid of precedent on that one.
There's never a precedent in this little town, is there? Come on.
Oh my God, there isn't the planning board. Move to approve all veterans credit for residents at 11 Spring Hill Road, 46 Barrett Farm Drive, and 86 Foxwood Path in the amount of $500 each, effective in 2019.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, Winter Farmers Market.
I move to approve the request of Mountain Music Winery to sell and provide samples of its product at the Rolling Green into farmers market.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, the next 9/11 process. At first I thought this was going to be another big to-do, so I was thinking of putting it off, but after talking with Karen, this is kind of a small issue that shouldn't take a heck of a lot of time.
Famous last words.
Right, this is Maple Drive and Maple Drive Extension. And a lot of the residents know that they have an issue down there. The numbers in Maple Drive Extension are duplicates from Maple Drive as well. So they do have a lot of package delivery issues. If it says 7 Maple Drive Extension, it's dropped at 7 Maple Drive. They're duplexes, they're on the wrong set of stairs. I haven't seen the list of how many people's numbers change, but the name isn't going to change. Well, I don't anticipate that the name of the road would change. Maple doesn't sound like anything. And Maple Drive Extension is probably only just going to get numbered further in. That I'm not sure.
Are you saying we wouldn't change Maple? One of those?
I wouldn't change Maple. Doesn't sound like anything else.
The extension might be worth changing though.
Right, and I don't know, I have not seen Chief Laurent's recommendations as yet. But I do know that I do have complaints from residents down there.
All right, does anybody else have any comments on this before we make a motion? I ask for a motion.
I move to approve the next phase of the 9/11 process as recommended by Chief Laurent.
Do I have a second?
Second.
No, we just weren't going to have to
I
do
have a
it.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I haven't done one of those green sheets. I don't know what.
Oh, that doesn't need to be signed, that can go right back to me. One of the properties is in a trust, so if it's in a trust, I need to have the statement of qualification that they are a trustee of the trust.
Okay. Anybody have anything under any other new business they'd like to bring up?
I don't know if it's really new business, but last year, Mr. Jones inquired about getting power to the telephone pole out back so we could plug his trucks in without the extension cords. And I noticed it's not done yet the new sign is all wired up, so I was just wondering why the job that was supposed to be on the books for last year, that is on the board down in the office at the end of the hallway, isn't done, and the new job is done. Especially with all the rain, you're blowing breakers, the extension cords get expensive as they get run over. It's something that needs to be done
Okay, all right,
soon.
all right. That would, who would,
I
Maldini
know
was
Paul had
contacted,
talked
I
with
think.
Maldini about
Right.
it.
is that right?
Yep.
Okay, can you just check with Paul and have him get Maldini on that sooner rather than later, because right now he can,
Ground's getting hard.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, also on that, when you talk to Maldini, they remind him about the sensor for the light. The flagpole light in Permanent, light sensor.
For the flagpole right out here.
Yeah, so it's on 24/7. I only noticed it because I come in there at night, he doesn't see it because it's during the daytime. Unique how that works.
Anybody else have any other new business? All right, we all saw the letter from the Stratton Board of Selectmen. They're willing to work with us as far as this 33 corridor goes, which I think is good. So the letter we sent out to them did some good. And the other thing I'd like to bring up is every once in a while, I think it's good, or I've been told, again, Selectmen's Institute, I remember this coming up, to review the minutes of non-public meetings and go over these non-publics and
Sealed ones.
seal them and unseal them if they need to be unsealed.
Okay.
So Karen and I talked this afternoon about that, and I think that if you guys would like to do it at your own leisure, go in, review all the non-publics.
Right, I've separated, I keep all the non-publics in a separate folder, and those that are sealed are folded and marked sealed. So we've separated those out. There's a folder of those that are currently sealed. If the selectmen can come in, take a look, read through them, see if there's any that you feel should remain sealed. Most of them, no.
Yeah.
They remain sealed until that purpose is no longer necessary. Most of the ones that were sealed were personnel evaluations, and just all it said was reviewed the personnel evaluation. And for the majority of the employees aren't even here anymore.
Right, so if you look them over, if any of the selectmen feel that any should remain sealed, we'll bring it up at the next meeting or a future meeting. We'll keep them sealed and unseal the rest of them. It's just some,
It's a technicality, and then we'll have one motion to unseal the non-public meetings of dates.
Okay? All right.
Do we need to change the date for the meeting at the end of December?
Okay, now let's bring up the December 24th.
That's the next night.
I think the next night.
How about the next night? The Christmas night.
I'm
we're all
hoping
tired.
for like noontime on the 24th as like the latest.
Yeah. Be lucky to see.
I can do it anytime you want to do it, so, you know, it's.
Right, it
when I
is a
don't-
payroll
my
week,
schedule
and
will be
that's the
open.
problem. We can't just cancel it because we do have to do payroll.
Meet and approve the payroll and be
Right.
done with it.
That'd be 3, because I can't guarantee I'll be here.
And all we need is 3.
Yeah, Thanksgiving I couldn't get out till 6, so.
Yeah. So, you want to meet the afternoon of the 24th? Which going is, are you open the 24th? I don't know what, okay. Do you want to get together the afternoon of the 24th and sign?
Yeah, noon would be my
The
cutoff.
latest, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
I can make it.
I don't expect to be available. I'll be in Concord. So
I'll be available.
How about you?
I usually work till 12 if I work in the morning, but I can get over, I guess.
Or would you be able to get out?
I ain't
So
trying.
between the two of you.
Between the two of us, we'll figure it.
Yeah.
The other thing
I'll
is
get
that
it
when it
on.
comes to bonus,
If you have a
Right, well, if
problem,
there's any encumbrances, I'll
I
have
know.
them for the meeting before.
well, we won't have ours done till it's proved till
What about telephone?
I was
conservation.
just gonna say,
I can probably run down 20 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'll bring
if
Mr.
you run
Jackie
into
with
a
me.
problem, I'd be available by phone.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
so we'll do it. We'll make it 12 o'clock on the 24th.
On the 24th.
Yeah.
Dedication.
You people aren't gonna close on Christmas afternoon, right?
We generally do.
They're gonna be like LL Bean, open 24/7.
Oh.
Oh. I mean, there's nobody around.
Right, there's nobody around, and we closed at noon time on the day before Thanksgiving because we hadn't had anybody for, quite a while.
It's gonna be worth.
Worse on Christmas Eve, I know.
Okay, manifests.
To start off here, I have the payroll manifest.
That means I
Just wanted to question,
getting my life.
our ordinary manifests are in the $57,000, $59,000 range, this one's 99. And so,
What, payroll manifest?
yes. That's what it says.
Got our,
It says that
It's
they-
got the $35,000, no, yeah. It has the $35,000 stipend for the fire chief.
Okay.
So that's 55, 65, 70, that brings it to 90 right there.
Okay.
And 3,500 for, is it 35? Look under Cresta Catherine.
Yes. And selectmen stipends are not in there? I don't know.
Another 2 weeks.
You know, I took his job, I didn't even know we
Yeah.
got a
The
stipend.
selectmen ones
I
are
didn't either.
not there.
I had no idea, when I got that check for 3,000, I went, what's this?
Yeah, I'll do this one. when we
Cresta
get going.
Catherine, yeah, that's 3,900, and Cresta Ralph, 35,000.
So that's the reason. Okay.
That's the reason.
Okay,
I move we approve the payroll in the amount of $99,005.
Second.
motion is second, all in favor?
all right.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Let's spit it up, Jim.
I move we approve the attached manifest of unpaid bills detail as of November 29th, 2018, in the amount of $1,126,381.03. This manifest includes Greenland School District of $200,000, elderly deferrals $14,544, and Rockingham County taxes $785,564. You got anything up there?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Move we hereby approve attached manifest of unpaid bills detailed as of November 29th, 2018, in the amount of $15,364.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
So is that a unanimous?
It's unanimous.
Well, that,
Okay.
because that particular one has taken out the amount for the,
Right, okay. No, but the one of them I had, everyone, I didn't hear a no, so we put unanimous, and then there was discrepancy, I didn't say yes. And
Okay, all right. No, that was
no,
unanimous.
on this last one, because the La Valley Brensinger one has been tabled, that was taken out of the amount that.
Right, I subtracted it out, I
Right,
just
Yep.
didn't want to goof it up again.
Okay. Any further business? Anybody would like to discuss? All right, a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Wish it would stop raining.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.